Can everyone hear me?
We can hear you, and I'm ready to go when you are.
All right. Thank you for the feedback. All right. So today we're talking about uh, groups linking and how we link things together in a Revit project. And part of the first things when you open a Revit project is you're going to get this screen that pretty much tells you it can't. Typically, you're going to get a, hey, I can't find a reference, or the links maybe need to be updated. And so typically we're going to tell you to ignore and continue opening the project because a lot of what you're going to see is going to be native to the project. But today we're going to actually talk about how what we need to do and how we manage the problem. And so when you open that up, you're going to get a window that looks like this in 23. It looks a little bit different in 25, but essentially it's the same thing. There's going to be a bunch of different categories for Revit links, IFC links, CAD links, DWF markups, point clouds, PDF and images. So we can link a lot of information in, and then we can keep track of where those links are, their saved path, and what type of reference it is. And so in this case, I have two. This is Riverwalk Amenity. I have the preliminary HVAC and then the electrical. And so these are set to overlay, and that is typically is just the link is in there, but it won't travel with the file. So if I like send this to someone, or they try to link it in, they're not going to see the HVAC or the electrical. They're just going to see our model. If I wanted to make sure that they can see our model and HVAC and electrical, then I would want to change this to an attachment. And so it still exists as a link, but it is something that is attached. And so if I then open, like say I wanted to bring in my building model into the site, I would get the HVAC and electrical with it because it's attached. Um, this kind of gets into the granularity of like how we want Revit models to be used by our consultants. Sometimes when they open our models, they don't see our units, and we need to make sure that we set that to an attachment so that the unit is traveling with the building. So those are things that can come up frequently if it's set to overlay or attachment. And so this saved path is most of the time our Revit files are going to be saved to the Autodesk docs. That's the Autodesk Construction Cloud where we have that folder that kind of leads you to the Riverwalk project. And I can click on this thing and say reload from, and then allow me to change the path or to update the path if I have moved this file in the construction cloud. And so it typically opens it up. You can navigate to this and say, here my, actually go back because this is a consultant model and this is preliminary HVAC. So I come here and then that would be that model. So all I would do here is just say open and it would reload that model from that location, which is already the location. So as that does that, it'll tell me that Keaton actually needs to do that, and I can be like, actually, I don't want to do that, so I'll just press cancel and not worry about it right now. So you can click through and be like, I don't have any IFC stuff, but here we find the issue. The fitness CAD background is not found, and it's because it's in the N drive. And so from here, I could easily go from and just try to reload this and say, oh, it can't find it from this location. So I probably need to go find who loaded that in and try to help us find where that location is to make sure that it's showing up in the drawing. And then I can click through here. There's some PDF stuff, some images where you'd have your vicinity map, your logo, but these are all links. So these are things that in CAD terms, this would be like your XREFs. So all these things can be XREFed in and be found under your Manage Links tab. And so that's kind of like when you first open it, you can go through and check those boxes and figure out what's missing. The thing that becomes problematic though is you're like, hey, I really want to see some stuff, but I can't see it in my model. Um, and so we talked last week about work sets and how certain work sets we can put our models into, like our mechanical or our electrical or our structural, and that can allow us to have a better control of what we're seeing and have a better control of what's visible in certain views and what's not. And so within the work set dialog, if you click the work set button down here, um, or if you go to manage, and actually we'll just do this, do the work set button down here. You can click on these and we can add new work sets easily. It's just clicking new, and then you have this box that says visible in all views. The cool thing about this is that a lot of our consultants models we do not want to see in all of our views. So we can say, I want to turn it off. And then when I, in certain views where I want to see them on, I can then go to, let's go to our reflective ceiling plan in here, and I can go to my view template, which pops up here. And then I can go to my work set overrides, and I can see my mechanical model was set to show in this view. And so this allows me to see that mechanical model while still having a global setting of it not being visible. And so this allows me to say like, hey, and I'm not wanting to see that in every view. I'm wanting to see that in only this view. And that allows me to have that control over that link through this way. You can also do that by just saying, hey, I don't want to have that on in this view and click it off. But then that's just a different way to hide something. So say like, I just don't want to see the Revit link at all, versus like, hey, I just want to turn it on. It's on a work set and I only see it in this view. Does that make sense to everyone?
Mhm.
Um, let's see. So from there, you can we can do the manage links button from your manage tab, or we can come back to that view and be like, hey, actually, we just got a new mechanical model. I can go from this preliminary model, say they gave us another one, not an updated one, that I can easily just go to reload from and replace this link with a different link. So you can easily do a, like, it doesn't have to be the same file. It's just like, I'm going to take this link and replace it with a different file. And you can do that from the reload from and pop it up and then pick a Revit file from that location. One thing that's helpful too is if you wanted to speed up your file and not go through the work set management, you can unload a file for yourself, and then it'll allow you to like work quickly in a file with that's got a lot of links, but then you can clear that override and like reload them back in and sync, and allows everyone to still have access to all the models that are in there without you having like removed everything and changed the way that the model's set up. And that really is a function of a model like Point Prospect Park, where we have all of our units, all of our buildings, and then we also have a container file. So this is a big file in terms of like all the pieces that are in here, and we manage those links. Here's the link of all the Revit links within that file. And so you can see some things are like not loaded right, and we need to go through and kind of fix these. But this is really helpful to be able to say like, hey, I've got work set management set up to where I've got my units, I've got structural, I've got my multifamily buildings, my liner buildings, and all of that kind of controlled here so that I can, but it's not uh, unmanageable to where you're just kind of like turning stuff off and on and not allowing people to kind of understand how the file's set up. So when we get into more complex buildings, more complex units that are set up, we have the ability to not just manage it from here, but we can manage it from over here. And so when in your project browser, you have your views, your legends, your families, groups, and then Revit links. And this is where you can actually come here and say like, have that same kind of manage links dialog where you can say reload from, open and unload, reload. You can do the select all instances in an entire project, and then it actually selects that thing. And then I can say like isolate that element, and then I can see that there's nothing in that view. So there's ways that you can select that instance to be able to view it without having to then go and be like, okay, well, let me do this and let me do a filter and let me come down here to See, I'm not even grabbing the Revit link at this point in this view. So you can tell that this, like, I could go through a whole bunch of steps trying to find something and then still not find it. So those are things that like we can work through with links that are able to like allow us to select that thing, um, and allow us to say like, okay, that's the linked model. There's information that we can assign to it, and then I can easily select that thing and assign it to a different work set. Like right now it's on electrical. If I needed to move that, I could do that without having to go through and trying to find that thing. You can come down here and allow yourself to select it without actually having to select it in the model. So one of the things that we ran into in Everly with links was we talked about how we want the units to travel with the building, but for signature, they wanted to use a third-party rendering company, and they were not getting our units because of their software not being able to read the link. And so then it was like, well, we kind of changed the way that we did linking versus groups in order to allow us to update these units faster. So there's a lot of like, how do we undo that to be able to put the unit in as a native element and turn the link back into a group? And the way we did that is you can do this, if you have a link, you can do a bind link, and that allows you to take the link that it like a unit or a mechanical model or whatever, and it converts that thing into a group. And so then what was like a in this case, if we had like that unit is that I can't adjust anything in this unit. But if I take this and say bind link and I like bind the thing to it, it's going to make this thing into a group. And then that allows me to then edit that unit within the file. Otherwise, I would have to open that unit file separately, like the external XREF, and then edit that thing and then reload it back in. And so in this case, it's going through its work. Hopefully this doesn't take forever. Um,
Kurt, does editing that bound group make any changes to the unit model Revit file?
at this point, no, you've removed, see, you get this warning, you've removed the link. Like
Okay.
there's no longer, it's no longer connected to that point. So we can remove that link and Carleone just to, I'm not saving this. I'm just going to close out of it. But now this thing is a group. And so if I click on this, I can ungroup that or get into the group and then change this door to be a single panel if we wanted to go that route. So we do not do this route, but that's a way that we can say like, hey, I've got this link and I like wanted to edit this thing, but I'm not, or I need to attach it in a way that I need to give it to the client. There are ways that we can take the link into a group and make it more instance based. Um, but this was a way that we went away from doing units as groups because they need to be reloaded, and then it caused a lot of issues with joins and reloading issues with, hey, when was the unit last reloaded? If the doors had not been coordinated, then every time you reloaded a unit that had uncoordinated doors, it was redoing the work of the project architect doing the door schedule. So there's a lot of like fixes that we've kind of achieved with going toward links and having links be the thing that we can, every time you open a file, it's re-updating those units to be like, okay, the doors live in unit files, those need to be coordinated with the building file, and then hopefully like all of it cascades nicely into a door schedule. So, but that's a good question. It does not update if you've bound it and made it into a group. It does not update that into the unit, into the link. So, does anyone have any more questions about kind of linking, grouping, and how we're kind of making, using unit links to keep our buildings updated as as work progresses, and then how you manage those links to be able to view things or to attach them for our consultants to be able to use? Clear as mud.
I- No questions on that, but I do have another question when you finish.
Yeah,
Not a,
yeah, this is it. What you got?
if you're changing, if you're overriding the way a line looks in a view and
Mhm.
it's a stacked line, like you've got two versions of it sitting on top of each other, say there's like some window trim that's drawn in there. How do you go in easily and select everything and then filter out just where you get so you can just keep your walls and beams? Like I need to filter out all the trim and casework and items like that. Would you just highlight everything and then use the funnel on the right?
You can do that. You can do the isolate by category, which is this nice little isolate category or isolate element.
Mhm.
And so in this case, like I can do this. I just click the door. I'm gonna do isolate category, and it's only gonna show me the doors in in that project or in that file. So that's a way that you can be like, you can do select the category that has the casement or whatever that
Okay.
you're trying to look through, and then be like hide that. And then because it's like sunglasses, I like to think of it as like you can pull them up and pull them down, and that's how I think of it as temporary. And then if you're like reset, and then it'll like reset the view. Um, so that way you can like quickly look at something and then like do what you need to do for the drawing and then reset it and be like, cool, that's like that took care of the whatever you're trying to do. So it's um, one of those things where as you work through it, you'll like realize how helpful that is. The reset, temporary is great. The same goes for temporary view properties. Um, so if you're like in a plan, in this case, let me go to this, this is on a template, this view. You can tell it's got this. If I were to go to VV, everything's ghosted out. This, I like to think of it as the camera, but if you click on that and you go to enable temporary view properties and that purple window pops up, now I can hit VV and it like allows me to make changes to be like, hey, I want to turn off, um, let's see, mechanical equipment, and then hit apply, and let's turn off walls. And then you're like, Kurt, you just like really screwed my drawing up. Um, then I can do that and like turn everything back on.
And
So
so
there's a
those
way
temp
that you can like hide it without being like, I have to undo all that hiding. You just like turn it off and re-enable it. So
so if you use the like if I just need to turn them off for this view specifically, I can use the temporary one and will it stay applied when I print them?
yeah,
Or
so you can do
okay,
enable temporary view properties, and then you can temporarily apply template properties, and then you can actually create a view from those properties. So like if you, let's say I do this and I start turning off columns and I turn off ceilings and I turn off walls and I click apply and I do that, then I can go to view templates, create template from current view,
okay,
and that's a way you can do that. Or that's just that was be the way I would do it. You can do temporarily apply it, and then you can apply it to like update the view if you wanted to go that route too. So
okay,
um, there's a lot of really like beneficial ways to kind of manipulate stuff and then just be like reset it. Because a lot of times, especially when you're doing discovery with a design architect or you're kind of like reviewing stuff where you're like, this is the drawing, but then you're like, this is the stuff that I also need to see that like
mhm,
we're hiding it, but then there's stuff beyond that we need to figure out. And so that's really helpful. And then again, you're just like restore this and be like, sweet, I was never here. Um, so those are great ways to be able to figure out like where something is, um, and then be like, I'm not messing with the sheeted view that someone's already been working on.
yeah.
So
All right, cool.
yeah, great questions. That's it for today, guys. Anything else?
Nope. I might come bug you for a second.
Cool. All right, we'll see y'all at 10.
All right,
All right,
thanks.
bye.
Thanks, Kurt.
Mhm.